Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Ministry Talks Podcast. How you feeling, man?
Doing pretty good. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here today.
Hey, listen, we're gonna get this out the way because this is gonna be a long episode.
Yeah.
It's got some meat, some potatoes.
So buckle up.
It's got all the fixings. We just want to, give a shout out to Riverside FM. We are an affiliate this season, like we were last season, and so we appreciate it. We love this platform, and we pray that you are enjoying this new space with Riverside FM. So shout out to them. Thank you. buymeacoffee.com/mentalkspodcast. We appreciate all the support that you give, because here at Ministry Talks Podcast, we have a coffee with every episode, and we would love your support, whether it's a one-time gift or a reoccurring gift. We just want to say thank you. Also, no pressure. Don't feel like you have to, but if you believe in what we got going on, we would love for you to do that. Also, like, subscribe, help support, get the word out, share what, we got going on. Maybe you're hearing something that you like, and just go ahead and drop us a like and subscribe and stay current on everything we have going on. And if you love what we have going on, especially as we dive a little deeper in season 9, go ahead and send us an email at mintalkspodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear your feedback. Hey, talk about this. Hey, I like that you talked about that. Can you go a little bit more in detail? And maybe we will invite you in on this season. We gave some giveaways during the last season. Maybe we'll try to see about squeezing those in. All right, Pastor Wes, I've given the update. I'm the floor is yours on season 9, episode 2, titled "Why Our Church Is Not Growing." What's going on, sir? Talk to us.
Yeah. So I've had this question posed to me by folks inside the church, leaders inside the church, people from outside of the church, business leaders outside of the church. And I've talked about so many different times that, churches are also a business. And so when I get to sit with business leaders, they even see a concern in their own head and their own idea, their own eyes of like, hey, something's different, like post-pandemic, especially, like something's different. Why is the church not growing? Well, I'm going to preface the entire rest of this episode with, I have a few resources I'm going to put down in the description, but at the same time, in the show notes, at the same time, this is also a lot of opinion. It's not speculation. It's conversations I've had with pastors or with business leaders or with other people. There's a Burgess report, right? Ron Burgess does a report. He's a church analytics guru, and I follow his stuff pretty closely. And so all of that will be down in the show notes in the description. So here's the beginning of all of the stuff. So I think that churches are not growing because we have stopped being concerned with reaching new people, and we're trying to overcommit to keeping the ones we have. That's a part of it. But a fallout from that, or kind of a twist from that, is that there are so many people who feel like they can do church better, or different. Everybody likes coffee differently, right? Everybody likes their pizza a little bit different. So then there are plenty of folks out there who are planting churches, and whether they do it well or whether they completely crash and burn is kind of irrelevant. But the concept is that some churches don't grow because there are too many choices. Referencing the Burge report, actually says, he asked the question, are there too many churches out there? Right? Because that's a big thing. That's a big question. Statistically, no, there are not. There are more Starbucks and McDonald's per capita, right, per square foot area, than there are churches nowadays, which actually speaks to the idea that the population growth density around America has kind of blew up and has gone so fast but planting of churches and maintaining of churches has not kept up with that pace of growth. Okay. So for that part, statistically, no, there's not too many churches. But when it comes to choice and reality, there are a lot of people who get into the idea of shopping for church, right? We're going to go church shopping. And that's where I think that there are too many options and too many churches and too too many ways that people can do coffee. Listen, it's coffee and
Yeah.
water and
Yep.
cream and sugar. Like
Yep.
you can
That's
only
it.
do that so many different ways.
I
But
agree.
if you think you can do it better, cool, give it a shot. At the same time, here's what I've seen. Here's what I've experienced. I have experienced churches, um, people leave a church saying, I think I can do it better. And they go out and 6 months, 8 months, a year and a half, 18 months, they eventually close down. Which of course, contributes to the idea that there are, I think, 10,000 churches a year that are closing their doors.
Wow.
But we're not actually planting 10,000 churches a year. So the number then is backwards, right? So why are churches not growing? Well, a part of the push to have a new church means that the people who do want to go to church, again, the number of nuns, NONE, the people that have decided that they are just maybe not religious or not going to do church anymore, or they just don't want to have anything to, that is actually growing. And the people that, which is really funny, because the people that don't know Christ or don't know about God or are not followers of Christ, that pool is so much bigger than the ones who have just left the church. Right. But I think churches have been focused so hard on, well, how do we get people back from pandemic? How do we get the people that we used to really like and love from this church? How do we get them to come back? Instead of saying, hey, where are the folks who need to know Jesus, and let's go out and reach them and meet them and show them the love of Christ, introduce them to the saving grace of Jesus, and then work them into a church from believer to disciple, as we said in our last episode. And so that's one of them. I believe it's Ryan Birch here. I'm actually going to pull up his report real fast. There are between 350,000 and 400,000 churches in the United States. Is there really a church on every corner? That answer actually is no. So if distribution is key and you type in the actual churches near me, then what happens is people are paying attention to this right now, right? They're going, oh, hey, I'm going to go find a church near me, which means then your social media has got to be great, which means then you got to be somewhere on the Google page, right? And there's not a lot of churches that do that well. So the smaller, older style churches, they don't do that well. And so that church isn't going to grow. To point to a different kind of concept that we covered long time ago, everybody likes newer, improving, something like that. And so, there's kind of a lot of competition out there. But when it comes to the whole, hey, where are the churches near me? Your sign outside may not matter anymore, because if you're not actually here where most people are, 99% of people are, then you're not going to maybe get the same play, right? You might be invisible to your community. It could be that you don't have an outward focus. You're so focused on being inward and how can we keep who we have and how can we maintain what we have. And so then people don't even know that you're here. I've been here 8 years and I still hear, and we're working on this really hard. But I still hear, wow, I've passed this church so many times, didn't know it was a church.
Why
and
is that?
I'm thinking there's a sign. We're out there waving at people all the time, especially in the summer. We do events, right? But I can tell you this, every time we've posted something specific on social media or the Nextdoor app, shout out Nextdoor, we're not a sponsor. But every time we do something like that, we get more response. That's because more people are here than they are anywhere else. And so, that's another reason that maybe you're not growing. Okay. I'm going to say this in a little segue and then I'll get to the next point. The name Keith Lee, he's sort of a TikTok, sensation, kind of overnight thing. He actually he set it up, and he set it up beautifully. Is it the food? Is it the service? Or is it the marketing? And 99% of the time, it's the marketing. Churches, business leaders, listen, 99% of our problem right now is probably the marketing. It's because we have so much to compete with. It's because there are so many different choices out there. The church kind of gets lost in the mix of all of it. And you just become another talking head or another voice out there that people get to choose from. And so again, To the statistics, no, there's not too many churches out there. But when it comes to the reality of like having choices, yes, there's almost too many choices for people to actually try out. And in a 5 mile radius, actually, I'll shorten it. In about a 3 mile radius here from Hope Church, there are over 60 churches in a 3 mile radius here.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
whatever flavor of church you're looking for, you can probably find it. And so that's kind of a big deal. So
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I feel like churches are not growing right now.
Okay.
Did you have any questions off of that before I jump to the next part?
What do you think churches should do well? And I guess when I ask that question, do you believe churches need to find their identity, their lane, and then do that well instead of trying to copy and paste what they see being done online or what they see being done within that 3 to 5 mile radius?
Right. That's a really good question. And it kind of speaks to one of the points that I was going to bring up a little bit later, but I'll answer in tandem here. So, yeah, I think that churches need to find what they're good at and they need to do it really well. I'm a big proponent of partnering with other groups or other churches or other nonprofits and not reinventing the wheel. And the reason that I'm a big proponent of that is because if you're a church trying to have a food bank when there's a food bank 2 blocks up the road, you're probably not going to do it as well as the other. If you're a church that has a coffee shop here in the Seattle area, there's 17 coffee shops between here and the next Starbucks. Like, you could pick your coffee.
That's true.
So that's why here at the church, we do a drip coffee, and then there's a Keurig for those who want maybe something a little faster, a little, a
Yeah.
little less bold, whatever. So like, we don't try and do fancy foo-foo coffees here. It's just, you get what you get. Though we are bringing in some really nice blended coffee. We don't
Nice.
advertise it. It's not that big of a deal,
Yeah.
but like, find what you do really well and then do that, and don't try and create things or compete with things. And so that is actually called mission creep. And I think that's one
Okay.
of the reasons why churches aren't growing very well, is because pastors, leaders, business leaders, even just folks are basically saying, I don't know why we're not growing. Let's try this. Let's try that. Right. We should do this. We should do that. And then you get away from the mission. And the further away from the mission you get, the less effective you are in your area for your kingdom. And then the other side of that coin is, if you don't know what you do well, you also maybe don't know who you're trying to serve and around you, right? Because when you formulate a mission statement or a vision statement, which, by the way, those are two separate things. Do you know who your target audience is? Do you know who you're trying to reach? Right? Do you know, oh yeah, I'm just trying to reach lost people. Yeah, but specifically, you're here, we're in an area where there are 42 languages spoken in a 3 mile radius, right? 5 mile radius. And so who are we trying to reach? We have everything from extreme poverty, homelessness, to extremely affluent in a 5 mile radius here.
Yeah.
Right. So who's your target audience, who you're trying to reach, and then narrow it down, hone it on in, and then actually, prayerfully, you're putting in a plan and you've created this mission, and do your best to stay on mission. So a real case study, a real group that I know here in Renton. Unfortunately, the doors had to close after, I think it was like 6 years. Their mission was to help as much as they can. Well, they outgave their ability to stay alive. So they put so much money into missions that they weren't able to actually maintain the business of church. And so their pastor stopped having a salary. Eventually he needed to go get a job, couldn't find a job here. So he went to a different state and found a job. And so the church closed down. And that was sad. Yeah, that was sad. And so there are things that are considered mission creep that will actually get you, it'll get you to a place where the church not only doesn't grow, it doesn't stagnate, it actually closes. And so that's another kind of another
Yeah.
point there.
Here's another question, man. And I know we already told you guys this is going to be a long episode, so buckle up. Pastor West, what would you consider a church plant? Because you gave some numbers in the beginning that there are how many churches closing?
About 10,000 a year.
So 10,000 churches a year are closing, and you said that those aren't really church plants.
Right.
So then what would you consider to be a church that is planted or a church plant?
So both statistically and just sort of the culture of church planting, whether it's with a group or on your own or with the support of another church, something like that. If you can launch a church with, let's say, a core leadership team of at least 5 to 7 people. If you can have financial backing for ministry. Now, notice I said ministry, not for salaries. We're not trying to garner somebody, a whole bunch of money and call them our pastor or call her our pastor. That's not how that works. But actually have some support for the mission, for the actual ministry. You're in a location that you know and love, whether you've parachuted in or whether you've done your research and you're local, and so you know who you're trying to reach, right? All of those kinds of things. And then you have to have enough people and enough purpose to actually have a business on the back end and a ministry on the front end.
Love it.
Well, what does that look like? It looks different for everybody. My brother-in-law right now, he's working on planning a church in Tacoma, and I love everything that he's doing. I support him 100%. I think it's time for him to do that. Here's the problem: he's going to plant in a church or in an area that's pretty saturated with larger churches. But he's going to have a launch team. He's going to have some support, right? But he knows he's got to be bivocational for a long time. And so, the things that are considered a church plant are a little various across the board. But if you could hit those few things, then you can pretty much consider it a church plant. And the reason that I was mentioning that that so many churches are closing, I think a third of them are actual plants that just aren't working. Because you can't garner the support. That's usually the biggest thing. It's never that there's a heart of somebody who just doesn't want to do it or can't do it.
I hate people.
I hate people. Then you in the wrong business, brother.
Right. For real.
So, but the garnering of support, right? I'm going to say this in a very harsh way, but people are tapped out, right? The government is just taxing our pockets so hard, and everything with inflation and yada, yada, yada. The consumer is tapped out, and people sometimes treat church like a consumer product. And so they stop giving, or they give less, or they don't give at all, right? Like some people come into church, they never give a penny. And you know what? That's okay, because God is the one who brings it upon. But I say all of that in faith and in trusting at the same time. If it's God's will, it's his bill.
Yeah.
So he's gonna pay for it. Right. You and I are supposed to be good stewards and good managers of those monies. That's a part of the problem, is there's not a lot of people who run church like a business and manage the money well, and then the doors have to close. Right. I mean, you can't, if you don't bring in $10,000 a month in tithes and offerings, you cannot rent a facility for $10,000 a month. That's just bad business practice. So,
I'm gonna let you keep ripping, man. Those were my questions. I mean, I got some more, but I'm gonna let you keep going, man, because I know you said you had some things, man. So keep going.
And so kind of on the idea of finances, since I was already on it, there, like I said, there are, I believe the number used to be 80% of the income comes from 20% of the people. Post pandemic, and especially in this world of inflation and everything else, right now it's more like 80% of the income comes from about 15% of the people.
Man,
and
that's
so
true.
Like the givers who have always been tithers and givers, they're in it, right? They whether it's through trust or whether it's through habit or whether it's through whatever their choice is, they just give, and that's okay. But when your church grows, and this is something that every church planter has to face, if you bring in people who are new to Christ, they're new to church, they're not going to give first right off the bat, right? They have to get used to the idea of what it means to give, whether it's a tithe or an offering or something.
Yeah.
And so if you if you don't have the finances there, it's not going to last, and that's super unfortunate. So if people don't give, then and here's what people give to. They still give to this. They give to mission and they give to stories, right?
Okay.
This is the mission of the church, and here are the stories that have come from us accomplishing the mission. And so so those are things that people still give to. And our podcast is actually a great example because folks have been actually supporting what's been going on here. And again, quick shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for that. But when they give to mission and then they give to stories, they give to outcome, that's kind of the thing that's happening. And so if the giving drops, then the church doesn't grow. The church eventually, peters out, that kind of thing.
No, that's good.
There's also an old mentality, and I am not harping on anybody. I'm not trying to bust anybody's chops, but there are older pastors out there, which there's a side B to this. Remind me in a second. There are older pastors out there who just want to do it the old way. Oh, it used to work this way. And if we can just get back to everybody understanding that it works this way and we just do it this way and it's all going to work fine. That's not how things work anymore. That's just not how things work anymore. I mean, it's unfortunate that we can't just go, hey, we're going to plant a church and we're going to bring people to Jesus, and we're going to, what used to be the phrase, we're going to load up heaven and we're going to unload hell, that kind of thing. And that was the charge, right? We're getting out there.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people who jump behind that anymore, because I just think we've gotten away from the idea that Christ is he is the answer. He is the answer. And we're not preaching a get out of hell free gospel anymore. Like, people want truth. They want hard, full of grace and truth. And the churches that are doing that seem to be the ones that are sticking around.
Now, what's the side B to that? Because after you say side B, I got a question for you.
Yeah. So the side B to the older mentality of pastors is, and I'm saying this knowing that I already have a plan to get out. I think pastors are in the pulpit too long. I think that there's some guys who need to retire who are doing this at, 78, 80, 85, and their churches are limping along. I have a friend church, a sister church here in the West Seattle area, led by a guy who's 83 years old, and it's limping along. Are they effective? I would say yes. In about this much of their ministry, I would say yes. Could that be used so much more for the kingdom? 100%. But there are, just like in the working world, the retirees are growing older and older and older, and they're not retiring to make room for new. And so that's why I feel like, I have a plan. I've got about another 20 years of this, which will put me at 64, 67. Holy cow. So I got about another 20 years or less than this, and I'm going to get out of the way.
Yeah.
I'm going to get out of the way. So that's the side B of that.
Here's the question. Like, as a church, how do we maintain the older people who have been there and the newer? So what I mean by this question is not trying to make everything new and fresh that appeals to the new, but how can we, as pastors, as church, people that, this is where my income is from the church. But instead of trying to implement, and you hit on this, instead of trying to implement a new system, a new church system, a new this and a new that to make it vibrant, to make it, how can we, keep the mission and the vision in front of our congregation, in front of our staff, in front of our volunteers? Because yes, we want to get new people, but isn't the goal at the same time? And I know we said in the last episode that we hold people like this because we want to also champion those to go. But how do we keep those that have been with us for 20 years invested? How do we do
Yeah.
both? Is it possible to do both, I guess?
I think it's possible to do both, and I'm going to speak from experience. So our longest time members of this church have been here for 53 years. They've been here 54, something like that. They've been here longer than I've been alive, and they're still engaged. They still are. They're serving every Sunday because they love the church. They love the mission, the direction we're going. They love what we're doing and what they're seeing. Right, the stories. The mission and the stories, we're bringing both of those in, and they love that. When it's time for Bible study, they get involved, whether they're leading one or they're just attending one. They love to get involved. When it's time for giving, they reach into their pockets on their fixed incomes, but they reach into their pockets and they give what God tells them to give. So it's definitely possible. It's definitely possible. But it's all dependent on the pastor's heart to make sure that he's not leaving the old people behind, right? Because these senior saints, I guess is what we can call them. They're the ones who went through the hard stuff. They're the ones who laid the foundation for us to even be here. And so to include them and incorporate them and make sure that they are not only welcome, but they are a part of what we are doing. So one of the things that we do here at Hope Church is we are part of the Renton Salvation Army Community Supper. And some of our folks who want to serve, they don't necessarily, again, we don't do anything that we think we could do better. We partner with somebody. So we're partnered with the Renton Salvation Army. They feed the homeless 3 nights a week. Well, some of our senior saints, they know that they can go down there and serve food and smile and talk to people and pray for people. I mean, they are still discipleship makers and disciples themselves. And so just wonderful, wonderful people. And in doing that, we maintain this unity of you are a very important part of this body. And so and then the newer people that come in, they like to see that momentum, they like to see that energy, they want to be a part of it. And so I think you can keep some of the older crowd, some of the older saints, some of the older ones who are out there doing with the new. And for us here at Hope Church, we actually eat together every Sunday. Every Sunday after service, we eat lunch together. We provide it here at the church, and people bring some of their own stuff. And man, some of our older crowd, they were the potluckers of the back in the day, right? So they know how to they know how to bring stuff in and throw down, right?
Yeah.
So those things are very important. That's a really good question, actually. To how do we keep them without and still reach others? And it's definitely possible. It does take work. It takes intentionality, but it all starts with the heart of the pastor saying, "I'm not trying to leave anybody behind."
Another question: why do you feel like partnership is so important for churches?
I feel like partnership is so important because the church was never designed or meant to do it all.
And who would be like, give examples, like you just gave a great example of who you're partnered with. What are other resources? What are other ways that churches should be partnering with the local community that they're planted in?
So again, we're part of the Renton Salvation Army. They have a food bank. We don't need to do a food bank. We need to say, if you need the resource, here's the resource, right? We are also partnered with Adult and Teen Challenge of the Pacific Northwest. So when someone's ready to get off the streets and they want to get themselves clean and they have given their life to Jesus all at the same time, we see if we can onboard them into the Adult Teen Challenge. And it's a 1-year program. Again, do you know what it would cost and how much money it would take and how many people it would take for Hope Church to develop that program that's already happening? And we have to fund it, and we have to staff it, and we have to make sure that we maintain the non-mission creep, right? We're not here to be a rehab center. We're here to be a church, right? And so those are some of the resources that we have.
You don't have to worry about any liability. And I mean, honestly, the Adult Teen Challenge, they have an amazing home there in Renton. I've been to it.
I know, I've been there too. We actually have, we have 2 or 3 guys that we have just recently helped transition into that home, which is fantastic. And so they're at the beginning of their program. We're also a part of Birthday Dreams. I don't know if you've ever heard of Birthday Dreams out here.
No.
Birthday Dreams is fantastic. They are a group that actually brings birthdays to homeless children. Their whole concept is everybody has birthdays. Just because you're homeless doesn't mean you shouldn't have a birthday party. So they bring birthday parties. Now they do it through the parents. If the parents are there and a part of the setting, they'll say, your parents brought us in to give you a birthday party. It's great group of people. Great group. We're also a part of CareNet. CareNet is the abortions or child loss or infancy death or any of that stuff, and all of the trauma and all of the rehab and all of the counseling that goes with all of that. We can't do all of that here, right? I can sit and talk with a few people, but I don't have the same ability to do. And that's one of the reasons why I think churches sometimes crash and burn, is they want to do too much. And they don't have the resources or the people or the time or even the specialty. I mean, here in the state of Washington, I'm not sure of everywhere else, but here in the state of Washington, you cannot call yourself a counselor or a therapist unless you are licensed and have insurance here in this state. So as a pastor, when someone's like, hey, Pastor Wes, can you counsel me on so-and-so? I have to say no. And I have to say, we can talk and I will guide you spiritually. Like that's the most we're allowed to say out here.
That's been big for us lately.
But that's what we do. We are spiritual guides. We are not counselors or therapists. And so we have to be careful of some of that stuff. So that's why we partner with all of these different groups, because the church was never meant to do it all. We were never meant to be the be all end all. Especially, again, if you have a pastor who is more, the leader of a church, let's put it this way. If you have a leader of a church that's more apostle than shepherd, that person's not gonna, take the time to shepherd or to care or to, sit there and listen, or their answer might be, hey, suck it up. Everybody goes through this stuff. No, that's terrible. That you don't need to. No, different answer, please. Yeah. Use the resources we have in the community. So
I got a heavy question for you, man. How long does it take to grow a healthy / effective church?
When we get there, I'll let you know. I think it's a constant striving, because just like a body's health, just like a physical body's health kind of comes and goes in seasons and through traumas and or through issues, or so does the body of Christ, right? So does a church. Now I'm going to say this, financially, business wise, if you have no debt, if your bills are paid, right? If you have money in the bank, I would say that is financially successful, right? If you can support other ministries, if you can, and again, your bills are paid. I would say that is healthy, that is successful. But that's just the business side. I think that if the people in your church are growing, hungry, inviting, and know how to disciple and or be disciples, I would say that that's healthy. But because just like a human body, a physical body kind of ebbs and flows in and out of health, I think churches do that as well. And so like I would say that we were quite healthy. We, Hope Church, were quite healthy pre-pandemic. We are still healing post-pandemic because we're trying to figure out. So we've got some finances on lock. We have some good staff here. We're doing some things that are actually bringing in, folks to Christ. We're getting people into rehabs. We're seeing the good effects of a healthy church, or the good signs of a healthy church. But I would not say that we are healthy at the moment. I think we're getting there. We're exercising. We're eating right. We're sleeping well, all the different things, but it takes that time. And so, are you ever there? Does it ever just happen? I can honestly say I don't know, because I've seen the ebb and flow of health through churches. And if I were to assess many of the churches around here, I would probably have a different view of their health than they would.
Okay. We're talking about how, why our church is not growing. Can I step on this side? How do we as pastors help grow a healthy staff? I've heard people say they've never seen a healthy church staff. I know you have mentioned the one thing that keeps you up at night is how are you going to pay your staff?
Right.
How do you keep that atmosphere healthy and engaging where people want to stay on staff or where people want to be on your staff, or you know what I mean? Like how
Yeah.
do we do that?
Again, I'll speak from experience more than just trying to guess or sugarcoat any of it. Just like a disciple needs to want to be discipled, a good healthy staff needs to want to be a part of a good healthy staff. And so everybody kind of has their part to play in creating a good staff team. Now, if you go through Craig Rochelle Leadership Podcast, you'll see many, many more things than what I can tell you.
Right.
He's got a ginormous staff, and he's in charge of X amount of people, and then those people are in charge of X amount of people, right? And so, but one of the things that I've heard about his staff that I'm striving for, everybody is seen, everybody is appreciated, and everybody has the vision. Like they know what the vision is. They know their part in the vision. And and so that's a great start. And you need to have, and on a smaller staff, like mine, you need to have chemistry, right? There has to be some camaraderie. There's got to be some chemistry. You got to be able to work together and laugh together and eat food together and throw stuff at each other and not get mad, right? Like you have to have that. There has to be good quality character, right? Because most of your problems that you're going to have on a staff are character problems. Right?
Yeah, no, keep going. You made like hearing you talk just made me want to ask another. We told you this is gonna be a long episode. You said something that brought another question, but keep going. Character development. Okay,
yeah. So chemistry, character, and then the other C out there is of course competence. Like, can they actually do the job? Right? Can they do the job? Because if they can't do the job, no, go ahead. If they can't do the job, then why do you have them there?
No, that's good.
Or develop them into it, right? Put in like a personal growth plan in place or something like that. And then if you are trying to get into, hey, we're training in fivefold, which I think we're going to get into the next episode.
That's the next episode. Yeah.
Right. If you're training into fivefold, now this is brand new to me. I've never trained an evangelist before, but I can tell you this, the man has character. Right. He and I are compatible. So we have chemistry, and he's growing in his competency.
He also has drive.
That's part of his character.
Yeah.
That's part of his character. He's got drive. He has some know-how, which speaks to the competency part, and he's getting it. And we're seeing the fruit of all of it. We're seeing the fruit of the prayers and of the hard work. And so having that, I think, develops and then being transparent and being honest. I mean, I've had to tell my staff out in Des Moines, and they're here, right? Our Des Moines campus and our staff here, listen, we're not going to get raises next year. Like I say that up front. Hey, we just made it this year. So we're not going to get raises next year. We're all just going to kind of sit tight and we're going to keep doing, and we're going to be thankful for what we have. Hey, we didn't meet certain metrics. And so what we're going to do is we're going to work a little harder. Oh, hey, we've had a great year. So yes, take your full, vacation or take some extra vacation this year, something like that. Right. Hey, we've got to tighten the belt, no more spending, which, I'm probably the biggest proponent of that just because I like to do things and give things and bless people. And so, yeah, I mean, those are ways that you can have a healthy staff, build a good culture, and then to underline and put a foundation on all of that. if you are the head honcho, you are the buck stops all kind of person right there, then you certainly better be humble enough and hungry enough to work as hard, if not harder than your staff, but be humble enough to say, I'm sorry, I missed it. Or to say, hey, you know what? This is a place where we can all grow, especially me. Like you can't, just because you're the boss doesn't mean you're the boss. You know what I'm saying?
No,
Doesn't mean that you're it.
Yeah,
So
if that's one thing I honor about Pastor Jack is he serves his guts out. You know, we I think by
he
the
does.
time
Yeah,
this
he does.
I think by the time this airs, I don't know if it's after Halloween or whatnot, but we do an event called Trunk or Treat.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of his primary roles is just serving the volunteers and serving those that are here. And, you know, he like he's getting people waters, he's getting people candies, he's making sure people have the things that they need to make sure that our event is as successful as it is. You know, we always like to have a police presence, you know, here. And I think I just recently heard at one of our staff meetings that one of the officers was like, hey, I don't know who this guy was. He was an older gentleman, head full of white hair, but man, he made sure that we had water and he always checked in. And it was at least like every 10-15 minutes. It's like, hey, are you guys good? You guys need anything? What can I do for you? So it's
Nice.
like, to me, if we're leading by example and if we're asking our team and our staff, you know, to do something, we got to make sure that we're going above and beyond in those spaces. And so here's another question. And I don't know how we'll land this plane. We'll do the best we can, but where do you see the church? Big C church. You know, I know you mentioned that you probably got another 20 years, 64, 67 years old. And me and you've talked offline. You've expressed those things to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I see myself being a senior pastor one day. So, you know, I would be a fool not to ask, where do you see the church, Big C church, little C, like, where do you see, you know, the church going, and how, you know, in your perspective, you know, and how do we continue to get better to see healthy churches growing, you know, not growing for the sake of my church is bigger and better than yours, but growing for the simple fact of like, man, I found a healthy church community. I found a space where I love to serve. Just like you mentioned, that older couple, like, where do you see us going as the body of Christ?
That is a really deep, really good question. And I'm going to give you kind of a twofold answer here. If we believe the Bible, which we do, the church will be, in about 20 years, I think that the church will be more persecuted and more pressed and you know, harder to navigate as a church than ever before. And again, it's because you know, the world does not like the enemy does not like where the church is, and his job is to destroy the church and destroy people and destroy Christians. And so so it's gonna be rough. And at the same time, we'd be a fool not to expect it. Now, not to play into it, but we'd be a fool not to expect it.
Right.
On the positive note, on the positive side though, on the you know, I'm trying to be the glass half full kind of person. I think the churches that are learning how to develop relational disciples and keep the mission, I think those churches will be successful more in the next 20 years than a mega church or than a mega community church, which, by the way, a mega church is anything over 2,000. But, you know, we've got churches out there that are 10 to 50,000 people. But a local regional, mega church is about 2,000. I think we're basically going to see people growing smaller in order to get the church bigger, which will eventually lend itself to, if the church ever has to go underground here in America, like it does in other parts of the world already, then we will see, you know, more smaller groupings of people. We will see, you know what I'm saying? Like you're going to see a smaller grouping, but we're going to have more of them out there. Is that going to be in the next 20 years? I don't know. But I know that what I do see happening is churches that know relationship and disciple making go hand in hand, those churches are going to thrive, and they're going to see results, and they're going to be bigger in the kingdom, because it's not just do as I do, don't do as, do as I say, don't do as I do,
Right.
kind of church mentality. It's not threatening. It's not guilt riddled. It's, we're doing this together. We're doing this thing called ministry, called life, called discipleship. We're doing it all together. And so I think that's the key. I think that's where the church is going. And if the church actually gets the draw for the fivefold ministry operation back, again, I think that's one of the reasons why the church isn't growing, is show me one church that has an apostle, a prophet, an evangelist, a shepherd, and a teacher in full function, and I will show you a healthy, growing church. And so I think we need to get back to the fivefold ministry for sure. And it's something that I think if we can learn to redo and learn to focus on, then I think churches will start to grow more and actually get more healthy.
Okay.
Yeah,
man. Is there anything else, man, you had before we
you know what?
down?
I do, and I'm not going to need to elaborate on it, because I think I've mentioned it a couple times before, but I am going to say this: the churches that have crappy buildings, and like I can't pay to, we can't pay to get a new building. Awesome. Can you have somebody paint the building?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Can you get a new sign or fix the old sign? Can you make sure that not everybody's driving in potholes in your parking lot? Do you even have a parking lot? I mean, why are you saying all this, Pastor Wes? We don't have the money for all of that. Awesome. Then maybe it's time to reevaluate some things. Because, the competition that we as churches have out there, competition between ourselves, right? There's so many churches for so few people. And at the same time, competition with the world. I mean, you want to go to a great restaurant with really good food and really good service, and you're going to talk about that restaurant. And I think I've mentioned this in one of our episodes, one of the seasons back. Like, I've never heard somebody say, "Oh, well, Outback Steakhouse hurt me." Right?
Yeah.
Church goes both ways. Remember, we had that episode.
We did that episode.
The reality is this: you go to that restaurant because it treats you well, because it's well designed, because the systems work, because the building looks nice, right? You're drawn to it. You're a part of it. You enjoy it. And then what happens? You talk about it. You invite your friends to it. You bring your family to it, all of that stuff. Well, why are churches any different? So if we've got an old building, we don't understand that we have a lot to compete with. And again, I'm not saying build a new building, but maybe throw some paint on it, right?
And one of my wife's favorite restaurants is Bahama Breeze, and she loves it because the atmosphere is good.
Atmosphere is great.
She loves the food. She gets excited when she gets to be able to go outside and sit by the fire pit, just to be able to, it gives her a little piece of, I'm not on vacation, but man, this is probably what being in Bahamas or being on the islands would be like. And dude,
shout out Bahama Breeze.
Man, their Jamaican jerk wings are phenomenal.
Dude, they got a Cajun chicken pasta that's actually really good. It's very Cajun and it's very pasta. So let me tell you.
Man, this episode was deep, but I liked it. And I know we're I don't care about being over time, man. Here, I got one more question, bro. I have to ask it because I just feel like while we're in this flow and in this space.
All right.
When do you know it's time to say, my time is up, I've served, I'm causing more harm than good, if I want to see the church continue to grow and thrive? What is that? How can that, because sometimes that can stunt growth or help accelerate growth. So talk to us, man. Talk to me. Help us understand.
I think you hit it right on the head. I think if you're looking at the metrics of church, and you've stagnated for too long. How long is too long? Don't know. That's between you and God and the people that you need. But if you've stagnated for too long, maybe it's time to reinvent yourself, reinvent the church, right? Recalibrate the church. Shout out Dr. Troy Jones. or hand it to somebody else, or close the doors, right? Like there are options. And we have to be, honest, and we have to be humble enough to say, maybe I've served my time. Or we have to be honest enough to say, and I'm not pointing any fingers, I'm not doing anything. Maybe we have to be honest enough to say, is there something in my life that I have to get rid of? A sin or a disobedience or a something that's actually holding me back from being a good leader. And if that's the case, then Lord, fix me first. Right. But yeah, those are some of the things that I see. And kind of back to the idea of maybe some pastors just need to hand the reins over. If you're not hitting the metrics, you're not seeing the things, then maybe God has you in a different spot or a different ability. Maybe he's ready to use you in a different capacity. And we're just holding on to that idea of, but this is all I know. This is all I've done. I mean, look at John G. Lake. I don't know if you know the story of John G. Lake, but he was a minister for a while. And then he reached a point where he was about done. He goes out and becomes a businessman. And, he didn't necessarily cut it as a whole pastor, but he went out and he killed it as a businessman. And then he had the funds then to go and start his healing evangelist ministry. And that blew up around the world. And so those are perfect pictures of God using you in seasons. And maybe, just maybe, God's ready to use you in a different season. Are you humble enough? Are you open enough? Are you listening enough to know that it's time to move on? And to cap all of that off, again, basically to just say, if the metrics aren't being hit, and if you're not looking at the metrics, then how are you ever going to know? How are you ever going to know if it's actually, where you think or where God thinks it should be? So I know that could be a whole episode by itself.
That is, man. It could be. And we're hitting that 53-minute mark. And we told you at the beginning that this was going to be a long episode, but rightfully so. We're going deeper this season, and I'm glad that we are. We're really wanting to maybe talk about some of the ins and outs of things on the church side. And so, hey, listen, we want to say thank you so much for joining us and sticking with us. Here's the thing. We are an affiliate with Riverside FM. So appreciative of this platform in this space. We want to say, go to buymeacoffee.com/mentalks. And listen, here's the deal. We are believing, and I should have said this on episode 1, but I'm going to say it on episode 2. We're believing for 5 sponsors. We are believing for 5 that will get with us and watch this, partner. Just as my brother said, partner with us. Maybe you are on this podcast for a reason. Somebody sent it to you, or maybe you seen it in the algorithm because you liked and you subscribed and you hit the follow button on YouTube. But we are believing for 5 donors and support that believe in what we are talking about, believe in the mission and vision of Ministry Talks Podcast, because here we have a saying, we don't know everything, but we're willing to walk with you through anything. And so we would love for you to get on there and just support as we keep going. And then send us an email at mintalkspodcast@gmail.com. Episode 3 is going to be, have churches gotten away from the 5-fold ministry? So episode 1 is believers versus discipleship. Episode 2, why are churches not growing? Now episode 3, have churches gotten away from the 5-fold ministry? As you can tell, there is a theme. We are now getting into, like I said, the meat and the potatoes and the substance of what we believe church is, how we can get better at church. And that's all I have. That's all we have. We love you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.
Love you guys. Peace.